Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, or whenever you happen to be listening to this. Welcome to the Film Realist Podcast, the film and TV podcast from a complete nobody. That is hopefully for somebody. My name is Kyle Naranya. This is episode 162. And on this week's episode of the podcast, I'm going to be reviewing Dexter Resurrection Season 1?
Sounds like it.
Sounds like it. It's very interesting. You are hearing that voice and you're going, who is that, listener? And you know what? That's a valid question. I am joined by Cade Onder, who is a man of the internet, has been writing in gaming since I can't even remember. And I'm going to say the biggest Dexter fan of all time. Cade, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I appreciate that. There are some people who started watching the show last year on Netflix that would probably claim different. Like there's a very, very intense, passionate fan base.
But do they count? Like, is
I
that
have
the
no idea.
same?
I
I
have
think
no idea.
if you weren't that's such an interesting thing just in general with how fandom has worked.
Yeah.
Where I'm a curmudgeon that discovered all of these shows that are now getting all these revivals when they were on
Sure.
cable.
Yeah.
And like, it's the funniest aspect of TV now. And I say this reluctantly because some people have forgotten how TV works. Duffer Brothers. And in terms of the length of a television episode or the construction of a season. And it's been very interesting. You and I have had our discussions online if people want to see them. We've talked a lot about Dexter. So we're just going to talk about Dexter Resurrection. There's going to be full spoilers. By the time you're listening to this, the finale has been out for about 3-4 days. So if you haven't seen it yet, you have been warned. But before we jump into spoilers for that, I should address the elephant in the Dexter kill room, which is you pointed it out and a number of people pointed it out on YouTube. I put together my top 5 Dexter villains, and I should address this. And if you're a longtime fan, I don't think you'd necessarily be surprised. I have 2 young children, and this is a one-person operation. I put together that list. I knew exactly who I was talking about and didn't think harder on Brian Moser.
It's also like very similar. Like it's most of the same letters.
Well, and funny enough, I think it's relevant to my mix-up, which is I didn't watch Original Sin when it initially aired. I actually watched it leading up to Resurrection. And we saw more scenes, obviously, with Brian in the Morgan household, and my brain went,
right.
Oh, yeah. And so it conflated all of that. Yes, officially, he was not adopted.
Yeah.
I was wrong, and that's a mistake on my part. It won't happen again. So I just wanted to address that is obviously a massive mistake I made. But everyone knew who I was talking about, so it didn't matter.
You got all the other facts right. It was a basic mix-up. It's okay.
Yeah, 2M.
I forgive you.
Oh, perfect. Well,
and as the biggest Dexter fan in the world, as you said, I think I hold some power and authority over that.
There we go. Well, perfect. I think we shouldn't waste any more of Dexter's biggest fans' time. So we're jumping into spoilers now.
I learned something about myself here. That thing for justice. Maybe it runs in the family. It's not about the thrill of the kill. Both things can be true.
All right, Cade, you watched, how many did you get initially for this season?
They gave me the first 4 episodes at the beginning of June. And so I sat with that for a month and I had to wait. I think I had to wait almost 2 months to get
Well, you would have,
5.
yeah.
Yeah, it was a long wait. And so I just kept watching the first 4 over and over again. And then they kind of would like give you 1 or 2 every other week. So I was always ahead up until the finale. They gave me the last episode the day before. So they kept that one under wraps, which is funny too, because the last episode leaked like a week early in Russian. So if you could speak Russian, you could watch the finale on pirating sites.
Yeah, don't do that. Watch it on Paramount Plus, or if you are... I actually don't even know what the Canadian release schedule is for this because I have Paramount Plus.
Oh, really?
I'll look it up and put it in the show notes, listeners. But this is the first time. This is a perfect opportunity before we really dive into Resurrection, because I think this
Mhm.
context is necessary for your average fan as well as the Dexter aficionado and myself, which is there have been a lot of shifts in this world, with New Blood being the pseudo season 9 to kind of say,
Yeah.
we're sorry. And interestingly enough, I was talking to some of the listeners about their reaction to the New Blood finale, which I personally thought made way more sense than the finale at the end of season 8. But Resurrection, my initial impressions, because this whole campaign, and then we can kind of dive into the season as a whole.
Yeah.
One of the my least favorite aspects, and I'm kind of glad I watched Original Sin when I did,
Mhm.
because this was something that I'm hoping, fingers crossed, if we do get a season 2, and we'll get to the setup for what that may be at the end
Sure.
of our discussion, which is I appreciate that Clyde Phillips had this idea. Wow, we're doing an origin story and we're doing this thing that is the current present. We can
Mhm.
have those things be connected. I
Mhm.
hated that. I really did, because one of my favorite elements of the original series was slowly allowing context flashbacks
Mhm.
to Dexter's backstory and his growing up with the code and how that stuff was all built with Harry. I really appreciated the way that that was woven through, because we weren't watching a show that was going to tell us something that you had to see.
Yeah.
So, one thing I'm very curious about is if Resurrection season 2 drops the fast forward
Mhm.
icon,
I was wondering that too. Yeah.
which is currently in the logo. We know Original Sin will not be moving forward, which I know
Yeah.
you're upset about. But into Resurrection, I think the irony is, with the actual title, it's not just surprise, Dexter is alive. There's a thematic purpose to that story. And I'm very curious, as a diehard fan, I found there to be enough of a change, which to me is important. But the
Mhm.
best part about this, as opposed to New Blood, because I think New Blood's setup is very much similar to the Dexter formula we were used to,
Mhm.
and elements of that were used in Resurrection, but there was enough of, and this is pun intended, the revival of the show needs to quite literally, and pun intended, feel like this has the New Blood, as opposed to New Blood, which was season 9.
Yeah. I think that's fair. I will say I was surprised. I don't think I realized how bleak New Blood was until I watched this show, and I was like, wow, that was like a really dark show. And I don't think I quite put that together until you see this, where it is a mix of that kind of old and new style kind of fused into one for like the best of both worlds. And then you're like, oh, this can be fun while still being like dark and dramatic. Whereas I don't know if I would call New Blood a fun show. Like it was entertaining, and I do really like that show. There are a lot of people who don't like that season. My girlfriend hates it. She hates the snow. That's her big thing. She hates the snow.
Don't come to Canada.
So I've always really liked that season and have been an avid defender of it. And but yeah, I think you're right where this has this perfect blend of like it's fun, it's classic Dexter. He's doing a lot of the things where he's stalking somebody. In New Blood, there wasn't really a formula. It was like we have a story, like a one season story. It's more of like an extended movie. So there's no need for a formula necessarily. Things are just going to happen the way they happen, as opposed to Dexter is a more methodical. He finds somebody, he tracks them, he vets them, then he kills them. In New Blood, it was like that guy has wronged me in some way and I'm going to kill that guy. And that was
Yep.
it. It was a completely different take. And now, I mean, not to get too far ahead, in the last episode, the last line is I'm going to be exactly who you want me to be. I'm Dexter Morgan. This is who I am. I'm going to be exactly who you want me to be, which feels like they're telling the audience we're not going to be New Blood Dexter. We're going to be this classic take on Dexter with a new edge.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, because it's something that ironically I talked a lot about in some of the Peacemaker coverage, which
Mhm.
is something people get sick of. And I've been somebody who actually doesn't dislike it as much, which is when you kind of trauma dump a character you really like. And the fascinating
Sure.
part is Dexter's entire life is born of
Yeah.
trauma,
Yeah.
and the exploration specifically in New Blood, and it is impossible to talk about Resurrection without discussing New Blood, because
Yeah.
you could call this New Blood season 2 if you
Yeah.
really wanted to, but I think there is enough, as you mentioned, that makes it feel succinctly its own show. But New Blood is so important because you have to establish a relationship with a burgeoning adult Harrison and Dexter. Like, he was a child last we saw him,
Yeah.
going off with, my brain always wants to say Hannah. It was Hannah.
Yep.
Yeah, Hannah. And that relationship, you have to explore that, as we've seen with Dexter and Brian
Mhm.
and Harry, is if you avoid this significant trauma, you are
Mhm.
only creating more chaos and quite literally evil in the world. And to have Dexter dealing with something, which is, we know he loved Rita, but
Mhm.
as a parent, I can tell you it's a whole different ball game when there's a kid involved. I mean,
Yeah.
I have two, but that dynamic is something Dexter would have no capability of preparing himself for.
Right.
And on top of that, adding in, he doesn't even need you anymore, which is something that, skipping that part of his life, going to the, he's a teenager, you're sort of around, but he was only really here because of trauma, is such a different dynamic than Dexter would have had any clue what to do with, because
Yeah.
he's got his own independence. I
Mhm.
mean, the irony is he's raising somebody who probably reminds him a lot more of Deb than anybody else.
Yeah, he says that quite a lot, yeah.
Yeah. And moving into this, where of course you have, Harrison's got his own life, and I like that we establish in the very beginning he is still a Morgan, or you
Yeah,
could argue more so a Moser,
sure.
in what happens to him in that first episode.
Yeah,
But exploring that relationship and giving us opportunities to see different familial relationships really establishes why we like I'm merging their names together, the
you're messing it
Morgan
up again.
Moser's lives, because all the supporting cast, and it's difficult to do that. And I commend like Scott Reynolds and Clyde Phillips for this, which was, there was no waste of supporting characters. This is 10 episodes of nearly an hour long.
Mhm.
There's a lot of time to invest in those relationships. And while it would have been really easy to sort of fall in line with, as you said, okay, you can take part of this show, which is, we've got Tyrion Targaryen, and he's got a group of serial killers, aka, oh my goodness, now I'm Peter Dinklage.
Yeah.
He's got a group of serial killers. Dexter's going to kill them all. That could have been the show, and I
Mhm.
don't think many people would have complained,
Mhm.
because it would have been something familiar.
Yeah.
But when you layer in the complexity, and not in an unnecessary standpoint, that's what I really appreciated. The way they wove in all the different stories, where we have all the people that Dexter gets to know in the house he's living in, with the not Uber,
Your car.
your car, and the dark passenger, and somebody trademarking that,
Yeah.
and exploring. It's one of the most fascinating parts about Dexter, and Michael C. Hall's been interviewed about this forever, which is the evaluation of a protagonist when inherently art is doing something evil. It's like a
Yeah.
law of fiction, which is ironic because Dexter has been killed. But usually, if you do murder somebody, you are likely to die. It
Yeah.
seems to be constant throughout every story written by mankind. But when you make them the protagonist and we see what their modus operandi is, you
Mhm.
want them to succeed, and putting Dexter against even worse people. And I like that they were almost cartoonishly ridiculous.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It all fits with New York City.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. I mean, we all know New York as a home to superheroes and supervillains, right? Like, it only makes sense to lean on that to a degree. Dexter's always been very like comic booky in a sense. Like they've made direct reference to that in like the original show with like the Dark Avenger and stuff like that. Like that is a core part of Dexter's thing. I mean, season 4, the best season in a lot of people's minds, is a
It is the
Kansas.
best season. There's no
Yeah,
debate.
that
It's the
I
best
agree.
season.
There are some people who will debate them, but season 1's better. I'm like, they're all pretty close. Like, not all, but there's a couple up there that are pretty close. But season 4, I think, is definitively the best. But it is the season that is like, can he have it all? Can he balance the double life? That's very comic book stuff. And that's really cool.
Well, what's the character? We know what the character you're referencing is. I know who you're talking about.
Spider-Man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
I always think of Spider-Man with Dexter, which is crazy to a lot of people, I'm sure, because they're complete opposite ends of the spectrum in terms
Well,
of their morality and stuff. But
there's a duality to all of our favorite fictional
yes,
characters. There
yeah,
has to be, because otherwise they would be consumed by anything. It doesn't. I'll give you I'll support you in that instance where my favorite fictional character is Batman.
yeah,
It's not interesting if you are just giving us Batman is Batman. If we
yeah,
don't see the human being behind the
yeah,
crazed vigilante,
exactly.
it's not interesting. You need to see multiple aspects of that personality because we all have those different shades. You're a different person when you're with your friends or
Mhm.
with your significant other or you're blabbing on a podcast. We all have
Yeah,
different parts of who we are.
and I think that's an interesting point because Dexter, I think, has always been a character study. Like, it is a thriller and stuff like that, and uh a big part of the marketing is always going to be who's going Dexter going to kill this time, right? But I think what keeps you there is you're engaged by the personal drama of Dexter and stuff. And I think New Blood and Resurrection specifically have really leaned harder on that side of it. Like, you don't get the drama that you have here without the 20 years of history of Dexter. Like, there is so much history, and I think that's why I like Resurrection so much as well, is because the passage of time is acknowledged. Things have happened. Dexter is nowhere near close to the same person he was at the start. He was working at the police department. He's now not employed at all, really, and living in a completely different state, and he was living under a different name and all this other stuff. Most shows, when they come back, you know, it's not the same kind of thing, but like Fuller House, everyone's still living in the same damn house. Like, nobody has changed. And it's just like, that's not interesting. It's a sitcom, but you know what I mean. Dexter is in a completely different point, and that makes the storytelling more interesting and layered. And then when Batista shows up, you have that real history in your heart where you're like, I know the relationship of these two guys. I don't have to imagine it. It happened in front of me. And same goes for Harrison.
Well, and the relevant history makes the furthering of the timeline more interesting because we've all seen closer to even film franchises where they try the legacy sequel. We've had a
Yeah.
bunch of those in the last little bit. And again, the balance that I really appreciated is you could take Angel out of this season,
Yeah.
and I don't think it's dramatically worse because the show gives you enough of the newer characters. I thought the two police we deal with in the New York department are in their own right just as interesting.
Mhm.
If they're the reason he gets caught, and just having that dynamic because the history is relevant to the story, it's
Yes.
not, you don't need to have seen, like, a great example would have been Daredevil Born Again initially was
Right.
going to ignore that history. It's
Yeah.
not the same show if you go, well, Defenders and 3 seasons of this didn't happen.
Yeah.
People care because they've gone through that experience with Dexter. One of the things I was nervous about because we ended so sad
Mhm.
or tragically would probably be the better way of phrasing it, with
Sure.
Harrison being responsible for Dexter's death. Like, it was a great poetic end to the series at that point.
Yeah.
Was, and this is a problem in a lot of shows in general, which is if characters just talked, problems get solved.
Mhm.
And both actors, and I give Jack Alcott a lot of credit because he's having to manage his own scenes
Mhm.
and be compelling, but then you're having to go back and forth with Michael C. Hall.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad, and this was, you can get nervous sometimes when people keep coming back to the same roles over and over again.
Yeah.
But Clyde Phillips, being the guy who created this show, ran for the first 4 seasons, and then has done New Blood and this,
Mhm.
and Original Sin.
Mhm.
understands what makes Dexter interesting, but also, as you said, he can't be frozen in carbonite. He
Yeah.
needs to grow as a person, and seeing that evolution, which was so inherently interesting. And I thought one of the connections I thought was one of my favorite things was in the original series, we of course had Harry for all of the flashbacks with James Remar.
Mhm.
And then New Blood did a really smart thing, I think, where that show continued from the ending of 8 in
Yeah.
bringing Deb in. And then the idea that he's trying to move past this trauma of Deb in Resurrection to bring
Yeah.
James Remar back. I would have loved and hated it if they'd made it Christian Slater, but I'm glad they brought back.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
glad it was James Remar. I'm glad it was James Remar. But also, I'm super happy this was a pilot thing, the first episode, where we got to see a lot of our favorite characters
Yeah.
throughout that moment, getting to see Dexter kind of like in the white lights. What does that mean for him? But the way that his conversations with Harry evolve, just as they did with Deb, because it's one of those things you can get so swept up in where it's such a ridiculous concept of it's a force ghost. Like that's
Yeah.
what the narrative purpose
Yeah.
it serves. But the show reminds you, no, this is Dexter's subconscious. This
Mhm.
is his Jiminy Cricket.
Yep.
And if Dexter is growing and changing as a person, as everybody does, so should Harry.
Mhm.
And then getting to see that evolution where, and it's something I love that he has as he sees Harry, is Harry as a grandfather. This
Yeah.
obviously never happened for Harry, who tragically took his own life.
Yeah.
But that evolution and its momentum through the show and it's one of the mainstays of Dexter's character, which is he didn't even realize, and I like some self-evaluation, which is so important because if a character is just going to be like, well, I'm going to do my thing because it's what people want to see, you can do that. But if there's no complexity to it, it's incredibly boring. In the first couple episodes, I think it's probably a good way to evaluate the shows to kind of, because it is sort of truncated into, I would say, 3 arcs,
Yeah.
which is that first bit with everything adjusting
Mhm.
and the concept of the dark passenger being somebody else who's, of course, horribly racist, which is, it's such fiction. And the idea of Dexter feeling somebody's taken his trademark and
Yeah.
his pursuit of Red not actually being one of drive to fill that need and seeing him do something just to protect somebody.
Mhm.
I had to watch that scene back going, no, he made a mistake. Like Dexter wouldn't do that. That's
Mhm.
not a Dexter Morgan thing. But the journey he's gone through, specifically New Blood, which is incredibly important,
Yeah.
and now moving forward with this pursuit of that and seeing Dexter in a way I don't think we've seen him before. Cause you could argue there's maybe, obviously, he is trauma bonded with all of this stuff with what he's experienced. But in the first 8 seasons, I would say Dexter's kind of running on autopilot until things like when we meet him in season 1. It's
Sure.
obviously as things go down the line, meeting your brother and all this and whatnot really change up the way he reacts to the world.
Yeah.
And like that's what that series to me is about. It's the car is constantly sort of swerving off of the road and
Mhm.
Dexter desperately he's like, I just need to get back onto the main highway lane.
Yeah.
Like I'm not doing any excursions off of Route 66.
Yeah.
And in this show, him being so abashedly like, no, I just have to deal with the now because there's nothing more important than this.
Yeah.
And the dynamic in the first, I'd say like 3 or 4 of dealing with, I actually got to solve Harrison's problem before I can really deal with any of my own stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, that was a really smart way of, I think, immediately telling you like we are going to shake it up a little bit this season by Harrison's the first person to kill somebody in the show, which is crazy and something I didn't even really expect. I thought, eventually I'm sure that'll happen. That just seems logical, but I didn't expect it to be the first kill. And then watching Dexter having to use his history of solving crimes to then solve this crime that his son committed, but also clean it up at the same time. It was so smart. I mean, like, again, we are 10, technically 11 seasons with Original Sin into this show, and it's still finding new ways to like keep it fresh and interesting. And I really commend that without straying too far off the road. And I think that's really crazy. And I'll be curious to see how well they can stick to that as they go deeper into the show, especially because it kind of seems like potentially we could leave New York at some point, or at least for some episodes with like Al and stuff. But um, yeah,
Yeah, I think the momentum for that was really fun because one of the things that I was nervous about, and we talked about this, which is like we're just getting more Dexter, and that's
yeah,
the last thing you want from any show you've been a longtime fan of, is
yeah,
when it just feels like more. You're like,
yes,
okay, but you can't just be more. You need to
yeah,
give me a reason to want to watch this. And the relationship between Harrison and Dexter, that's become the framework of the show. We
mhm,
had Deb and we had Dexter in the original 8 and that dynamic, and then you had Rita for the first 4.
mhm,
Spoilers. And then dealing with the aftermath of that for the remaining 4,
yeah,
where this show's backbone is Dexter and Harrison. And what I appreciate so much about their evolution as characters is I'm so glad Harrison is not just the next, I mean, he is a Morgan, but the next Moser who's like,
mhm,
yeah, he's screwed up. He's going to be just like dad, because
yeah,
that would have been, I don't think a lot of people would have complained. It would have been familiar and most people would be okay with that. But exploring inherently through Harrison and then using that as a mirror for Dexter
mhm,
to be like, yes, and this is not something I'm saying morally as Kyle Naranya. If we move the murder to the side, what are you actually doing? What is the main goal in what you're doing?
yeah,
And that's always been the purpose behind the code, which
mhm,
was to take out the wrong, or not the wrong, the bad people who keep doing bad things. And for Harrison to see that from his dad and understand who his dad is, not be somebody who's like, well, I got to know you and I don't like it. Like, that would be reasonable, but to have somebody who's quite literally been born of blood just like him,
mhm,
to see a kindred spirit, but then also see there's something more than just this lust that Dexter has, and even pursuing something in the, I guess it would be the Justice Department, because who knows
yeah,
if he's a cop or whatever. And on the backbone of that, the relationship that he has with Claudette and Melvin, the 2 detectives in New York, their momentum and their relationship with trying to solve that crime, and how they're almost like they are characters in their own Law and Order who just sort of pop in and out of this show. But every time that they are there, I enjoyed those characters because they
mhm,
make the relationship between the two of them fun. And you have somebody who I would say Dexter really hasn't dealt with yet, which is she knows her stuff. Like
yeah,
somebody who's been obsessed with the New York Ripper and that been the irk that she has, an understandable relationship that connects with Batista. I don't know if I needed the Miami callbacks where they're like, "Hey,
oh,
look, we're in Miami."
yeah,
I get it. It's fun and all, but this show has moved on to 2 different settings at this
yeah,
point. Having Batista there is enough for me, and the mix up of present problem with past problem, which is also what both of the Morgans are dealing with too.
mhm.
And Dexter quite literally being resurrected because a dead guy couldn't be arrested was one of my favorite moments in the earlier episodes.
Yes, no, I agree that that whole idea that Batista comes into his life and he's not there. I like I guess the better way of framing it is he's there on like suspicion rather than like I'm gonna get you right off the bat. But as more starts to happen, basically like by like probably episode 3 is when he's like, all right, I need to like really investigate this guy. um and knowing that he, yeah, quote unquote, was resurrected so that he could be prosecuted was pretty cool. And I liked that that first scene you see with him and Batista is them hugging, and like Batista's definitely like happy to see him to some degree. Like he has missed Dexter, but then the next time they hug is at Blessing's apartment, and Dexter hugs him to kind of like not, arise suspicions with blessing. And Batista just has this look on his face like, I'm gonna nail you, man. And the whole crumbling of that relationship was just really great. I do agree to some degree with your point about not needing to see the Miami stuff, but as a fan, I'm like, I like seeing Masuka and Quinn, so like I'll allow it for the one scene, and it does seem like there's probably a decent chance they bring Quinn in. I don't know how they do that without retreading the Batista storyline again. Obviously, Batista, that's like the third time they've done Dexter's friends investigating him. So, do
I
we
mean,
need to see that a fourth time? I have no idea.
well, this I don't want to get to the setup of season 2 yet, so we'll put a pin in that for now.
Sure.
But the I think one thing we haven't really discussed, we've mentioned it, of course, the Society of Serial Killers, which they don't really get a name, but let's call them that. I
Yeah.
love just the colorful nature of the bad guys because the presentation in Dexter Phase 1 is usually somebody who's just horrendously horrible. We get
Yep.
aspects of their personality. I mentioned Miguel Prado and
Mhm.
the downfall of that. And watch that short. I think it's, I mean, I'm biased. I made it. I think it's good. Getting to just meet people who are inherently accepted who their own identity
Mhm.
and the difference that that makes in Dexter's life, seeing like I think it's a perfect opportunity for more tragedy, which is just what this guy he just keeps shoveling it into his own bucket
Yeah.
because he meets these people he believes to be kindred spirits and then realizes specifically with Lady Vengeance and obviously as a MCU fan, I love Kristen Ritter and
Yeah.
getting to see her play that aspect of somebody you want to be invested in because you think she might have the same sort of reasoning and motive that
Yeah.
Dexter has, only for the revelation to be like, no, she's just as sick as the other wackos,
Yeah.
was so disheartening. And David Del Smolchin, who's playing the dual role, which that twist is ridiculous,
But it
but
works.
it's so good because it's so funny, and the Gemini killer being two people and the way it's set up perfectly, which
Yeah.
is I give the show a lot of credit because you're like, what is he doing? Why
Yeah.
is they passing the notes? And
Yeah.
the framing of those shots in that Indigo, which is what it looks like, or Barnes and Noble
Yeah.
for it's for our American listeners,
Mhm.
Indigo is our bookstore. And as long as they last. And the framing of that shot is deliberately confusing, which I
Yeah.
really appreciate from a cinematography standpoint because it's disconcerting. You're like, what is happening when Dexter is following one
Yeah.
of them?
And I'm pretty sure both of them are in that scene because he drops the book and then leaves, and Dexter goes to look at it, and then the other one, I'm pretty sure it's the second one, is there to retrieve the note. He sees Dexter and backs off, and I'm pretty sure that's the one that confronts him. And
Yeah,
then
it would have to be. The one
yeah,
he kills first is this one who saw him second,
yeah,
and I think one of the aspects I'm really glad they just sort of let us think about, which is
mhm.
to spoil the prestige. They kind of tell you which one's which.
Yeah,
I'm not going to say what that means,
yeah,
but in this instance, they are simultaneously the same person.
yes.
And so you've never known when which one is which.
And there's really no way to tell.
And there's no significant facial
Nope.
scar or missing fingernail or something. And that
Yeah.
dynamic and an aspect of the show that I'm glad we got to see some of this exploration with Dexter, which is the show wants you to think it's just going to be kind of back to basics.
Mhm.
As I mentioned earlier, he even orders the blood slide deck box,
Yeah, the same
right?
box.
The same box. Um, Showtime, Paramount, can we re-release that Blu-ray
I really want that. Yeah.
with Resurrection? Would be
Yeah,
great. Just do Dexter, New Blood, and then Resurrection. People will buy it
I
because
will. Yeah.
as a home video fan, I'm really not happy with a lot of the cases we're getting now. The current Dexter box is just a big one and
Big
it
plastic
sucks.
box. Yeah.
It's no fun.
No.
And the perfect visualization of this season in Dexter gets that slide from I believe it's Red
Mhm.
and it's a thick piece of glass
Yeah.
that doesn't even fit into the box. It's the perfect visual metaphor for what this season is, which is, yeah,
Sure.
some things are pretty similar, but it's not exactly the same, right?
Yeah, that's a
It
good
does
call.
not, it doesn't fit in. And Dexter's relationships have all changed. Of course, like his relationship with Batista is one that is antagonistic, which is not something we've seen. We've had other people within the police department he's had to duck. And oh, I should address this as well. Somebody tried to tell me that Dokes isn't a villain. It's all about perspective, people.
Yeah.
He is an antagonist slash
Yeah.
villain to Dexter. Batman is a villain to the Joker. It
Yeah,
just matters who's telling the story.
exactly.
And getting to see how those pieces are sort of laid quite literally with Dexter killing off a couple of them, framing Mia,
Mhm.
and the evolution of this. And one of the things that is just why I love this show so much as well is all of the main players of this season were just cast so well. You bring in Uma Thurman as the muscle. She could have just been the muscle, and that would have been fine. But you give her a backstory, and then Peter Dinklage as Leon Prater, as somebody who desperately wants to understand the psychology, is somebody who is so disconcertingly off putting in wanting to understand. It's like Mindhunter, but just with him.
Yeah.
And his backstory and the relationship that he's had with the person responsible for the death of his parents, and just sort of being a fanboy. It'd be like one of us sitting on the fence watching one of our favorite shows or sports teams being filmed. Like, I just want to, can I go over the
Sure.
fence,
Yeah.
please? I just want to be in it. And his psychology is so interesting because you get somebody who doesn't see them as people, which is completely against what Dexter has wanted his whole life, which is he's only really been understood successfully by one person, that being Harry,
Mhm.
because Rita never really knew. Deb, that's a whole can of worms. And Brian was just like, you're a killer like me, dude. Let's be friends. And then obviously we got an assortment of other villains. Miguel, obviously that didn't work out either.
Yeah.
His relationship with Harrison is the backbone of why he sees what's screwed up with this whole
Sure.
serial killer society.
I think what's interesting about the set of villains is like I think everyone kind of mirrors Dexter in an interesting way. Like the Dark Passenger, I think killing the Dark Passenger is like just one big metaphor for him killing his own Dark Passenger, right? He's taking control. There's less of a, I feel like a negative force against him this season. Usually he's always like, I shouldn't do it because of this, and that. He's just like, I'm just gonna kill these guys. And that's it. I mean, once he like really gets wind of like this isn't gonna work, I'm not even gonna hesitate. I'm just gonna start killing these guys. I mean, he kills the Gemini killer at a party. I mean, he really just takes advantage of these opportunities. So killing Dark Passenger, literally killing his own Dark Passenger, in my opinion. And then I think even like there's maybe something to say about Al escapes. Al's a family man. Is that some way of saying, Dexter's family life got away from him? And that's why Al gets away. It's like, that's another big metaphor of like, and I'll be curious because they're obviously going to go back to that character. Do you think he can kill a dad? Do you think there's that? I feel like there's something going on there that, because Al's a guy who's like not strong enough to be like a season long villain.
No, he's
So
not.
you can absolutely make that like a 1 or 2 episode arc, and I feel like just going to Wisconsin to kill Al isn't gonna be that interesting. So I
Well,
feel
he's
like
gonna go to a Packers game and then
you're
he's gonna go kill Al.
yeah, yeah, it'll be
Oh, where's the visual? Al's gone to a Packers game with the family and he gets stabbed through a cheese head and it just pours.
you've solved it. They're gonna do that now. There's definitely gonna be some cheese metaphor, I'm sure.
I think it was a really apt description you had describing the visualization and metaphor for the Dark Passenger, and you
Yeah.
can even use that towards Mia, which is
Yes.
somebody who allegedly had a code. I think Al's metaphor or the symbology he might have could be that, as you mentioned, with the family life that did get away from Dexter, but is he what we thought the Trinity Killer was? Because
Yeah.
remember in the early, like that's I said this in in the video when I was ranking them, because the Trinity Killer's the best. It's not
Yeah.
even debatable.
No.
John Lithgow literally won an Emmy for that performance.
Yeah.
But that character, he's not revealed to the audience as this guy's okay. No,
Exactly.
he's immediately introduced as awful. It's to Dexter's point of view. Dexter thinks this guy's have
Yeah.
everything, for only for it to be revealed. No, it's all a complete sham.
Yeah.
Based on Al's scenes, it would appear things are actually going well. The guy's continually procreating in this economy. Okay. But that relationship he has is very interesting to me, because it could be one where, but regardless of this guy's positive relationships with his family, he still goes on road trips and just kills young women or adults with ponytails.
Yeah.
I actually think he might be one of the most sick people,
That
because
laugh is
yeah,
disturbing.
it's just pure enjoyment. And he's the one of the people we meet that I'm shocked has never been caught, because he GoPro footages it. I guess it's a forest, so maybe that helps with no
Sure.
evidence,
Yeah.
but that guy's lucky. So I don't know. I think it'd be nice to sort of pivot to the conclusion being the last two of the season, which is
Mhm.
it ramps up with this relationship with Batista quite literally being on Dexter's heels, with
Yeah.
tracking him with the AirPods case, which I thought was very funny.
Mhm.
Although I have a problem with this,
I think I know where you're going with this.
which is Dexter's using an iPhone. Eventually, they would
Yeah.
notify you that there's AirPods there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, Dexter, I think is he a Gen X? He's probably a Gen X.
He was born in the 70s.
So, maybe not. I don't want to be ageist. Harrison for sure would have found him. But Batista doing something illegal, which I really like that addition to that. It shows the obsessive nature in something they're looking at. And I
Mhm.
think for Claudette's character, Detective Wallace, it mirrors her as well. The show provides opportunities for most of our main cast to see what would happen if they went to the nth degree, or if they cross that line
Sure.
into being a criminal. We get
Yeah.
Dexter, or Harrison has that with his own father. Claudette sees that in herself. And that only works because of the New York Ripper stuff. If
Mhm.
she's just some random cop, it's not nearly as interesting. But having Batista be somebody who's obsessed with catching the Bay Harbor Butcher because of his obviously everything that he's gone through, and
Right.
Claudette having had that get
Mhm.
away from her. There's no way she doesn't see herself in Angel, for that to culminate in him being the first. I mean, technically it's the only kill for Leon,
Yeah.
and for the visual plethora of metaphors and just symbolism in general in the room of serial killer
Right.
swag,
Yeah.
for that to be the setting for the finale, it's really interesting just on it being in a safe in general. And you think
Mhm.
about what safes are supposed to mean. Like,
Yes.
Leon has put the most horrible things in here. It's a place where he should quite literally feel his safest, for him to trap, probably in this, I mean, in our show's instance, the most successful serial killer ever
Mhm.
in Dexter's world, right? Countless people he's killed. And all the dominoes just start falling. Where is he going to kill Batista at in the middle of 9? No, Batista winds up being killed, as well as, I think, I was so happy because it was something I didn't suspect. We had a bunch of hallucinations of other characters in the pilot,
Yeah.
only to get Brian in 10. I paused it and started cheering, because you have somebody who was there in the beginning, to be spending time subconsciously with
Yes.
Dexter in what could be his last moments. And you have to believe Dexter has those things where it's like, am I just my brother?
Mhm.
And no, you have Harrison. You have
Yeah.
something that Trinity never had, that Al's the only one that we know of that really has these things, that sort of is his anchor to being a human being.
Yeah, I thought it was actually also really interesting how Batista's death presented to him on the silver platter by Prater was really cool because if you remember back in the very first season of Dexter, Brian presents two people actually. He presents that security guard from the hockey rink, I think is what it is, or whatever, and it's the guy that gets like the prosthetic. That's where we meet Brian Moser for the first time, and then Deb. And he's like, if you kill Deb, we can be like besties for life. And
Well, yeah, it's his last connection to the
yeah,
Morgan, right?
exactly. And so he obviously rejects that. And we are presented again with that same thing by Prater, where he's like, here he is on the ice truck killer table. Um, if you want to live a
Oh
life of
my
serial
god,
killer,
I didn't even think of that.
you didn't realize that?
No, I obviously knew it was they make a point of being like, here's the ice truck killer
Yeah.
table. I wasn't thinking as to why he showed up. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
dumb.
But yeah, so he is presented with that same choice and makes the same choice again, even though maybe now more than ever it might make sense for Dexter to take this deal. To some degree, you could make a better argument for it, maybe. And then, yeah, then he shows up, and I'm bummed because this got spoiled because it leaked a month or a week early, and people were spreading it around. But also the actor posted on his TikTok page like in July. He was like, I'm in New York," and he's like, "Here's this red shirt." Everyone's like, "So you're in Dexter?"
That's like when
But
Michael Coulter said he was in New York, and you're like, oh, I wonder
right,
what he's in New York
right,
for.
and you're gonna be at this New York Comic Con panel with all the Daredevil cast. Interesting. But
I
yeah,
just hope it's Devil's Reign. All I've said on every podcast related to that is if you haven't read Devil's Reign, read Devil's Reign. I hope that's what Born Again Season 2 is. It's really
but
good.
yeah, it was just really interesting to see him pop back up because he's always been this like the extra devil on the shoulder, more so than any other part of Dexter. And seeing him pop up, he's obviously in the first season. He pops up a couple times. I think in like season 2, once or twice, and then periodically after that, in season 6, I think is the last time we see him when he goes to Nebraska with his brother, to find Trinity Killer's son. And so to see him back, he's always there at his lowest moments, and I think that's really interesting. And that back and forth is just like so perfect. Again, they just haven't lost a step in 20 years. Everyone can just come back and just turn it on, and you don't feel like it's weird. They might look a little different, a little bit more wrinkles or whatever, but everyone's still got the stuff. And that's what makes it so exciting. And yeah, I'm with you. When I saw him, I was like, oh, there he is.
Yeah, it's so compelling to me, and it's funny because this show manages to do what I like so much about streaming TV when it's done well, which is each episode on its own right. And Clyde Phillips is being somebody who cut his teeth on actual network slash
Right.
cable TV. You need to tell compelling stories week to week that also happen to be a season long story because
Yeah.
otherwise it just doesn't work. If you're just telling hour-long things and there's no cohesion where each episode is just a part of something,
Yeah.
you've got to really write that episode well for it to make sense. And Resurrection does a really great job of doing that. I think the best place to kind of wrap up would be the setup for season 2 is here, which is there's the filing cabinet.
Mhm.
And again, what I really appreciate you mentioned this, which is something I think we're probably going to see, which is as opposed to just being New York, it's going to be a road trip season.
Yeah.
And I would actually be really happy if it's not just Resurrection 2. Call it something else. Call it
Sure.
Dexter Exodus.
There are some in there that I think are New York based because there's like a Yonkers killer, which Yonkers is actually where they filmed part of the show. So I'm sure they'll stick around in New York. But the opportunity definitely opens up for he's got a filing cabinet of serial killers from around the world, and that means you can run this show for as long as you want. You can always say there was another file. And that's awesome. They've completely, like, you don't have to have it where it's like another serial killer in Miami. Are we serious? Like, you definitely open up the door more. Obviously, I'm sure there are ways where they'll try to get people in New York. I feel like I think a lot of the people like in the show live in New York, so I'm sure most of them just want to stay there. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see more opportunities where Dexter is traveling around. And um my question really remains as to what they do with Harrison in that scenario, because it seems unlikely Dexter's gonna be like, come with me, father son road trip.
But I think this would be a really great place for that character to be, which is Harrison's what, 20, maybe 19,
He's
right?
like
He got his GED,
probably, yeah.
right? So there, I think where we leave Harrison is a good place to let that character not go, but
Mhm.
like park him. He's going to do
Sure.
something, because if we were to get, I mean, we're not, but Dexter Original Sin season 2, Deb should be away at school, right? The way
Yeah.
that that show was set up. So you can park Harrison for, if we're doing 10 episodes, 7, and then spring break, and he meets Dexter in Mexico or something, right? So I think there is enough to explore with this. I think Clyde said when they pitched it to Michael, they said 3 seasons,
Mhm.
which in total gives us 11, which, or no, 12,
30
13,
episodes.
13.
Oh,
And
13
so
seasons. Yeah.
if we include, Original Sin.
Yeah.
So I think there's definitely enough. It is such an achievement for Original Sin. Really screws up my brain when I'm trying to count these stupid things. 9 seasons of the main show. No, 10. 10 seasons of the main show. And I would argue Resurrection is one of the best ones, which is incredibly, incredibly impressive. I've run out of things to say about it because I was so impressed and I went in super hesitant.
Mm.
Cade, do you think you've said everything you feel about Dexter Resurrection?
I think so.
Okay.
Like generally top down thoughts. I'm just like really impressed with how they have managed to make sure it doesn't feel phoned in by anybody. Like nobody has come in here half-assing it, which I really appreciate. The writers are on top of their game, making it as thrilling and exciting as possible. Like I think what you said too about like streaming shows nowadays can feel like they're just weirdly paced and like treading water, and that's why TV, like I've completely stopped watching a lot of TV. Like completely. Dexter is a show that's like classic TV. Every episode has a beginning, middle, and an end, and they're really well paced. I would say, like, if I had a criticism for any of these, I like the original show having 12 episodes. I felt like that was the perfect length. There was never really any filler in those seasons. Like everything always overlapped in a really great way. I would love to have those extra 2 episodes. Maybe you don't need it because the B plot isn't as strong anymore. Like it used to be a procedural police show. So like there was a lot happening at Miami Metro. But there's really not that piece of it anymore. But
I mean, you just want more Dex. You want more Dexter.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, that's really it. Because I do sometimes feel like some things maybe get rushed to a conclusion. I kind of felt that way with New Blood, where like if they really had those extra 2 episodes, they might have felt like they stuck the landing a little bit harder. Maybe people wouldn't have been so bothered, because a lot of people's criticisms of that show are that things are very contrived and happen because they have to happen, and it doesn't feel like an organic progression. And I understand that. So I think if they had a couple extra episodes, it would work better. But I'm sure this is like a Paramount streaming decision or something. I know they're also still airing this on Showtime. Like
Oh,
every
really?
Sunday, every Sunday you can watch it on Showtime.
That's cool. I like that
Yeah,
they're doing that. That's
it's pretty
awesome.
neat. Yeah. So, but yeah, otherwise it's great. I'm super thrilled. I'm pumped that everyone else loves it, and I'm not alone on this island like I was with New Blood, where I felt like if I said something, people were gonna attack me. So
I mean, the bar was fairly low coming out of season 8.
Can I ask you a question? Just fun?
There's something I've been meaning to ask you.
I ask the questions, you answer the questions.
Why do you ask questions to which you already know the answers?
Did that count as a question?
Yes.
Damn it.
So this week's question of the week was, what is your favorite TV show revival? So Arsto Baker writes in, I haven't watched too many revivals, honestly, or at least not a lot that I found memorable. I guess X-Men 97. I'd say it was
Ooh.
better than any season of X-Men, the animated series, was very much felt like a natural continuation. I agree. The one thing that's really hard to do, though, in the modern animation landscape we live in now is a lot of people underestimate how good those shows looked back then,
Yeah.
because I've talked to professionals in the industry. Animation budgets have not gone up with inflation, which is why things wind up looking very flat at times, because
Sure.
they have it used to be like the famous thing was Batman the Animated Series. I'm sure X-Men was less because it was an Avi Arad and Saban. It was a
Yeah.
co-produced show with Saban, which is but there's something about the way animation looks now which just drives me crazy. I did love X-Men 97 though. Pacing wise, I would say the same thing goes here. I would have taken more episodes for that.
Sure.
All right. Hazra Bahana writes in, my favorite revival is the new King of the Hill. The season really feels like it's the same show but modern, but still kept how the characters felt writing wise and humor wise. I haven't watched that yet, but all I've heard is good things
It's
about it.
like great, apparently. I think IGN gave it like a 10
Yeah,
or
which
something
is,
crazy.
I mean, let's maybe not use IGN for
Well,
our number.
They don't give a lot of 10s out. I mean, sometimes they do, but that's still crazy.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite revivals because it's happened 4 or 5 times is Futurama. Futurama has been canceled and brought back 5 times.
Yeah.
And it's actually one of the shows I am behind on, and I don't mean to, but when there's certain things covering, this is why, and you know him, friend of the show, Rob Keys, he's a binge guy. I
Yeah.
don't like binging
Neither do I.
because the weekly release allows me to have time to watch other stuff. Yes, his
Yeah.
metaphor is always like, well, you don't read different chapters of different books. That's a different thing. I play different video games between each other. It's fine. All right, let's see. What do we? Yes, it's
He also is on a lot of planes. He has that's all
yeah.
he can do.
Where's he now? He's probably in New Zealand. I don't know. Scotty Cameron writes in, I was tempted to say Star Trek Strange New Worlds, but then I stopped myself because that really doesn't count, or does it? Yes, it does. It's a revival of the TOS era, so I would say it counts. Let's see, what else do you have here, Scotty? It's Star Trek would have been like had Jeffrey Hunter not jump ship, pun intended. I don't know what that means. Sorry, Scotty. So I'll say Justice League Unlimited or the new Batman Adventures. Those lived up to the originals. They were also in my childhood. I'll give a shout out to Daredevil Born Again and Star Trek the Animated Series. Scotty Cameron is my most diehard listener for the Star Trek stuff, and he is an avid comic book reader. So if I don't know it, Scotty usually knows it. There's a lot of different things in here. Dylan writes in, could I technically say Justice League Unlimited? Fine. I'm not going to say no. I guess I'd have to say the new King of the Hill. I clearly have to be watching the show. Oh, and Cade, you'll appreciate this. Generally, revivals don't work for me. Even Dexter New Blood ended terribly, so I'm hoping Resurrection fared better. I would say it did, Dylan, so I definitely would say it did. And you know what I like? There's enough of this show, and I'm not wishing this to be the case, but in an instance where this doesn't continue, it would be okay of enough of an ending.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I don't
felt that
think
way
it's
too.
happening because personally, here's what I think happened. I have no insider information on this. I think Skydance, who now owns Paramount, they are Skydance Daddy, went, why are we paying Michael C. Hall for 2 Dexter shows when he's Dexter? I quite literally think that's what happened. So now we're likely going to get the next Dexter thingy with just one Dexter.
The reasoning in like the original report that I think Variety put out was that they just want to focus on a Michael C. Hall starring Dexter. They realize that's where the money is, and they're like, really, why would we bother? And I imagine another thing was like, it's the same writing team for both shows. We're gonna slow down the release of a second season of Resurrection when that's clearly where our focus should be.
All right. And Jermaine writes in, he wrote an email, which is you can email the podcast at filmreelistspod@gmail.com. Jermaine, I love you. He's got a bunch of DC stuff he wants me to talk about, which is normally
Always.
we're not doing the news, but I got to touch on all this stuff. All right. So first thing he wants to talk about is Superman 2, which is not germane. This is kind of the point. It's Man of Tomorrow. I addressed this on the news thing for it. I think everybody's assuming the same thing, which is my assumption would be this is going to be some sort of other extraterrestrial threat that requires Lex and Superman to have some uneasy team up.
Yeah.
Brainiac, Mongol, those make the most sense. In the comics, Supergirl is responsible for Brainiac coming to Earth. And her relationship with Krypton is obviously going to be one that's different than Clark's because she was a teenager leaving it. And I suspect we'll see some of that trauma, a reason why she's doing what she's doing in Woman of Tomorrow. If you haven't read it, listeners, read Woman of Tomorrow. It's incredible.
I forgot that's the title of the movie as well.
No, they removed it. It's just Supergirl now.
I was going to say Woman of Tomorrow and then Man of Tomorrow back-to-back years. That's
No.
kind of cool.
Yeah, it would be very, very cool. So yes, I suspect Man of Tomorrow will likely be Superman Brainiac adaptation, which was Jeff Johns and Gary Frank. It's very good. The irony in this is there was a Superman movie called Man of Tomorrow, which is animated, and they made a Superman movie called Superman Brainiac already, but who cares? So I think that's what's going to happen. The thing about the 2-year releases I'm really curious about is that year we're getting Man of Tomorrow and the Batman Part 2. God, I hope so. But
seems like it.
It seems entirely,
likely,
the script is now out.
But people have read it.
People have read it. The 8 people.
Yeah.
And Jermaine is curious. I'll ask you this as well.
Sure.
He says, are you mad God and Monsters plan isn't exactly going to the way they announced it? No. Here's my main thought on this. I have yelled on a podcast. I don't remember which episode. Go through the archive, people. There's 162 of them. That the thing about the plan that I didn't like was they announced stuff and then at least a third of it just sort of disappeared. James Gunn from the beginning, and you have to really be listening, he deliberately said that this was part of the plan.
Yeah.
Clearly, based on, I don't care how quick a screenwriter he is, this stuff has been brewing. So in the Superman wrapped over a year ago for filming because James Gunn completes his scripts, he storyboards every single shot, which allows the visual effects artists a year to work on it, which means he then had over a year to write Peacemaker as well as Superman. So I'm not shocked with the turnaround. And no, I'm not mad. I think the only aspect for me that I'm frustrated by is I was excited for some of those projects for us to not hear anything. However, I'm excited we're going to get a Superman story continuation. My curiosity, though, with what we are currently getting, and I wrote about this actually on Multiverse of Color, is that most of the projects we're getting are tangentially all Superman connected because we have Peacemaker season 2 now. We are then going to get Lanterns, which is really going to be another thing connected to Superman because we know Guy Gardner's going to be in it. And I'm really looking forward to that. I think the cast and the writing team behind that is stacked. And then Supergirl and then Clayface, which will be, if we don't get any Batman tease, I would be shocked. And then we get Man of Tomorrow. I'm okay with that. If we are using the tentpole of Superman to expand the world for us to then get successful spinoffs, that's fine for me. And lastly here, connected it to the Batman Part 2, the reason I don't want Robert Pattinson in the DCU is not that it wouldn't fit. It's the Batman they pitched to us doesn't make sense as Robert Pattinson. That's the only reason I don't think it makes sense at all. You can have a grim and grumpy Batman with a super hopeful Superman. That's fine.
Yeah.
But if they're doing father of Damian Wayne and all this other stuff, that implies a significant history Robert Pattinson just doesn't have. And the retcon that would have to be required for that is what I don't want. I like Matt Reeves just kind of hanging out in his dark, gloomy world because he's one of my favorite creatives because I love the Dawn of the Planet of the Apes series, and then what he's done with working on the Batman, and then his work with all the writers for the Penguin, which was a phenomenal show. So that's why I don't want that. I'm not mad with what the DCU is doing. I'm incredibly optimistic because clearly they're excited about the projects they're making. And for anybody who's keeping score, I liked the Snyder stuff and I like the new stuff. Superman was a success because they wouldn't be making more. It's abundantly clear that's the case. So, Jermaine, thank you so much for writing in your email. Next week's episode of the podcast is going to be another TV season review because I'm a big scaredy cat and I don't go see horror movies, although I'm probably going to see The Long Walk anyways. But I wanted to talk about another TV show that I love, which is Strange New World Season 3 is going to be next week's episode. So the inspiration for the question of the week is this. For my Trekkers, what is your favorite Star Trek property? Is it one of the series? Is it one of the movies? You can comment below on YouTube, on Spotify. As I said, you can email the show or you can at any of the Film Realist social medias. Make sure to include the hashtag QOTW for that. Cade, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you. I love talking about Dexter and having a platform to do it. I write articles every week about Dexter. I think I have like close to 100 articles since November about Dexter on comic books. So that'll slow down now that there's not much going on.
Oh, come on. No, you can get at least 2 or 3 more on speculation where season 2 is going.
I got like a month or 2 of articles still in the can. Like I got stuff stacked up, but yeah, once we hit like November, I don't think I have anything unless the season 2 rumor mill starts spinning up, which is good.
Well, New York Comic Con is when it's in about a month. So I think you'll get your announcement of season or whatever. Probably then. It wouldn't make any sense to make people wait any longer. So yeah. I'm sure you can look forward to that. Cade is on all the stuff. I'll make sure to include his socials in the episode description. If you haven't yet, please follow the podcast on your preferred podcast platform. Leave a 5-star review on your favorite platform because it helps the show in the old algorithm beast, which I don't love, but it's a part of the game. And I have a new review on I'm such an old man. I keep saying iTunes. Nope, I lied. Did I read this one already? I don't think I did. So I'm going to read this one again. Apologies, listeners. I don't have a list for this. It says, enthusiasm unlike you've ever heard from Kingston Kid, 5 stars. I am a fan of Kyle's energy and enthusiasm for film and TV. Thank you so much. So if you write a review, I will read it. I would please attest to the listeners to please subscribe on YouTube. It's the best place for the podcast shorts as well as all the other stuff. But if you want to follow all the Film Realist stuff, the bio site is linked in the episode description. Thank you so much for listening. My name is Kyle Naranya, and I will see you next time.